It says live performance audio off. I don't know if that's bad or not.
It should come. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. It's oh, hello. I think I should hit the start webinar there.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. All right. If our cards are right and the stars are in alignment, we should be live right now. And we're obviously missing one of our most important characters, our technical officer. And yeah, he is taking the night off because he has some family stuff going on. So we wish him well and the family and all that. And other than that, it's me along with Diane, the lovely Diane, the flight attendant extraordinaire, and the lovely Eric Larson, retired captain extraordinaire, and me, Capt Ron. So this is Fearless Flight. And this is the place that we hope that you'll go if you either have a fear of flying, suffer from flight anxiety, or if you know somebody, or if you just like to learn about what mistake Boeing has made in the last week or so, at the rate they're going. Seriously, just want to talk about airline stuff and aviation stuff. So we're glad you made it tonight. We have a fun show planned for you. Let me just open my slides, and so you got something more interesting than me to look at. And so this, like I said, this is Fearless Flight, our weekly live show that we put on Facebook and simulcast on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, X, I guess, and YouTube. So, and for any of you who are just joining us, we first of all say hi in there, leave a comment in the wherever you're at, Facebook or YouTube, and you can watch past shows in either Facebook or YouTube on our YouTube channel, along with our other videos there. We always like to encourage you to join our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather Facebook group. It's private, easy to get in. Just fill out the little thing on Facebook. Use the link there, and it's a great place. It's for talking to other fearful flyers and people who are in various stages of overcoming their fear. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the Alaska Airlines follow-up. Not a whole lot there. Going to highlight the 301 graduation flight coming up in Burbank again. And Southwest dropped the fares again. I went back and got $35 more in my pocket. Just another sale today. So we may extend that in. And if you got the email that we sent out earlier in the week, you know that we dropped the normal tuition there from $797 to $497 to $297. So I'm thinking that we're probably going to do that again to coincide with the cheap fares. We want to get you on there as cheap as inexpensively as possible. We'll talk about the 201 live monthly group coaching webinar we got coming up this week. It's really going to be a fun one for me anyway. That's Thursday, January 18th, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And then, as we always do, if you got any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to put them in there. Diane is feverishly monitoring the chat there so we don't miss your questions if we can. So we'll start out here, Eric. We'll just banter a little bit about Boeing. This isn't going to be the quick fix again. You know, it sure smells a lot like the 737 MAX, although fortunately there was no tragic loss of life or anything. But they've found some holes in the supply system again, and you know, it says here the headline, they're taking a hard look at quality control after the Alaska Airlines incident. Well, we would hope that. And it points out that some of the things that they may have thought that they had fixed, they haven't done that. And I couldn't find any really new news. Eric and I were talking there. I asked him if he had seen it. It's the story of finding, or that they found the door there, and what they were hoping to do was get more information on those. What is it? 4 bolts, Eric, I think. And to find out either whether they were missing or whether they broke. you know, and if they broke, did they break during separation, or did they break when they hit the ground? And they're pretty much guaranteed they can find all that stuff. You know, I talk about, you know, CSI TV shows get a lot of billing, how cool they are. But we've been using CSI forensics in accident investigation for a long time. They can basically tell from, you know, what you had for breakfast when they go through an accident with a fine-tooth comb there. And this is the last one there. This is I think this was the airplane that landed, and you can see back here on the right, there's the door plug that on the other side, and it says that when they checked those, it says they found some loose fasteners in there. So maybe that'll provide some information to go backwards up the system and figure that out. Okay.
And
So
Ron, we should remind our peeps that are texting us a lot, in an easy way, that they see their ticket and see there's a MAX on there and they're very worried. This is the 737 MAX 9 series, and only Alaska and United own some. American
in the US, yeah.
in the US, American and Southwest fly the MAX, but that is the Dash 8 series of MAXes, and it physically does not have that door there at all. It's just solid fuselage. So it is not an issue on any of those airplanes.
And the whole story, right, Eric, is the only reason that it has a door plug is the airplane can be configured on the inside. They don't do anything to the size of the airplane, but they can configure it on the inside to give you even less leg room and put 222 seats in there instead of 193 or something like that. So when they go over what is it, 199, then they got to have another 2 more exit doors there. Yep. And so this again, it's an airplane that has been really successful. That is the Boeing 737, but it's gone through these, you know, 60 years and multiple iterations, and it worked so well for so long to just keep making little changes to it and giving it a rubber stamp. And I shouldn't say that because you all will take me seriously. They have an approval program. But that's what came to light in the 737 MAX 8 that where they had the 2 fatalities. And in this airplane, it's the first time that they ever had such thing called a door plug in there. And none of the airplanes that were in service in the U.S. on Alaska or United were at the higher seat configuration. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. Gosh, I had one other thing I was going to talk about, but don't know what it was. Oh, you know, Eric did had an interesting story. I'm going to turn over to him in just a minute. You know, we were talking. Was it last week? We're talking about the overwater stuff and ETOPS in the past few weeks. Anyway, we're talking about the flying over water and how that's highly regulated and how we get word or get alerted to changes and all that. So Eric found a story here that it probably wouldn't even caught your eye, but it would have caught the crew that was involved. So if you want to share that, Eric.
Actually, credit to Diane who found the story for me, and I saw it and said many bad words. And I know if at least one of you is very interested in this because we have one of our peeps flying to Kona shortly after our 301 class in February. But what happened was Monday morning, I think it was Monday morning, very early, it was discovered that the single runway in Kona had some washouts and cracks in the end of it. And the airport authority had to close the airport right then, immediately. And we always talk about overwater planning and the fuel and when we have an engine failure, where we're going to go and the weather. But we never really talk about the physical facilities. And one of our flight planning rules is anytime we're going to an airport with a single runway, we have to have an alternate filed primarily in case there's an accident on that runway for some reason, then closing the airport, which this essentially is what happened as a result of having this washout. It closed the airport. Well, there are airplanes over the ocean on the way there. And so the companies got a hold of them, and some of them diverted to Hilo on the eastern side of the Big Island, and some diverted to Honolulu, and some diverted to Maui. And the concern of the airline wasn't so much oh, geez, where can we put them? It was like, okay, when we put them somewhere other than where they're going, we need to figure out how to get them there. And so that drove some of the decision because of all the other islands with all the other runways of where they're going to put the airplanes. So that is something that's taken into consideration during the flight planning phase, and it actually was required here. Now the end of the story is a little happier. Apparently, 24 hours later, this morning at 4 or 5 a.m. Hawaii time, the airport opened back up and they made a good solid patch there. And the runway was opened while they were patching 8,000 feet of it. It's an 11,000 foot runway. So they were able to do most of what they needed to do. The traffic frequency in and out isn't so great. They couldn't stop, move the equipment, have a departure and arrival, that kind of thing. And they could work with that because airplanes come off of Kauai, Lahui Airport, and Maui with shorter runways than that, and they deal with it. So the airline companies were able to deal with it thanks to the advanced performance of these airplanes. They were able to use it. But anyway, they did affect this patch, get the whole runway reopened. And from what I understand, even before the washout, there was is a plan to completely tear out the whole runway and rebuild it later this year, probably in the fall, because it'll be tour season in the spring. People want to go out there because they're freezing. And the summer they have the time. And when that frequency of flight drops off, they're going to rip the whole runway apart and rebuild it. And at that time, what they'll probably do is use Hilo on the other side of the island for their primary airport, and then give people a bus ride down to the Kona Village, which is very scenic and about an hour and a half ride. But anyway, I don't want to get too long-winded, but the whole point of this is a thing that the airlines consider when they dispatch the airplane, that could happen. And sure enough, it did. Somebody went out there and looked at the runway and go, oh, this is not good. And airplanes were in the air, but they were accommodated, and it worked out just fine.
I'm just thinking about that in my career. How many times, Eric, would you say that you went to an airport other than your intended destination?
Gosh, if I did it more than 2 or 3 times, I'm trying to get a memory of it at all.
Yeah.
And I know I'd been some on the way, like on the way to Tucson a couple times.
Yeah.
When we'd have our haboob in here, and then okay, it's gone. Turn around and come back. You just and turn around. But actually having done it, gone and got on the ground and landed, not on one hand.
I've only been flying not quite 5 years, and I've done it twice.
Lucky you.
Yeah, except we were supposed to go to San Luis Obispo. Oh, that's so nice where they put us up, and we wound up in LA overnight.
Oh, yeah.
And then another time we were coming from Eugene, I think we were coming to Phoenix, and that was the time that we had a tornado in north of Phoenix. And so we wound up down in Yuma. We landed in Yuma, and we stayed in Yuma for about an hour until we got the all clear, and then we came back. So,
Yeah, and same with me. I can think of 2 times that I did. Once in the winter flying up in Denver and went to Grand Junction, and another one when we were headed down to Orlando from Columbus and got over there, and everything was just getting hammered with thunderstorms, and we turned around and went back to LA or back to Atlanta, got some gas, and then went back and while the weather was cleared. So it's extremely rare. And people, one of my favorite questions, people say, well, Ron, did you ever have any close calls? And of course they're thinking that, when I nearly died or cheated death and all that. And what I really should tell them is, only the worst ones were the ones I created myself, and usually nobody knew, but just little things that, you say, oh my God, I can't believe I did that, but you caught them. So that was a good part. So it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, that's the system. That's the system.
Weather forecasting now and predicting and all the tools people have for this instantaneous information, both the pilots and the company. If they notice there's a vice like that, they just won't launch the airplane. They just won't launch the airplane and head out there and see. They'll ground hold it rather than see how much bigger a mess they can make.
Yeah. And one of the most the time one of the times I nearly had to go someplace else was going into Sacramento when they still just had the one runway and clear skies, no weather, no nothing. And we get up there about an hour out, and center says, "Hey, they just closed a runway. They had a disabled airplane on it, you know." And so you start thinking about it, but you got support from dispatch, and there's other airports around there and all that. So it turns out not to be a thing. But so I just thanks for finding it, Diane, and talking about Eric. Okay, so we have, I'm going to call your attention to the chat box. If you haven't looked there, I put 3 messages in there. One is we're going to talk, I'm going to just highlight the EMDR coaching session that we got coming up on Thursday. So I put an article in there that I wrote about EMDR. I call it a blog post. So you can download that if you like. And then the next link there is our live monthly group coaching webinar, our event that takes place on Thursday night, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern time for an hour and a half. We'd like to get as many of you as possible to join us. That is a paid event. I realized that I got to actually pay somebody to do some of this stuff, and my retirement funds were getting depleted. So that might sound weak, but it's why we charge. And frankly, if you were out there and you were wondering what the next step would be for you, I would say do something regularly. Watch the show every week and do the coaching webinars. It's low cost. And what I found is the people who get the best, the fastest are the ones that stay engaged, and they know that it's a process and it doesn't happen by the time they take their next flight. So think about that, and you can go over and look at the page, and if you want, you can enroll there. And then the bottom one we do have for anybody who's going to be in the Los Angeles area on February 24th. We're going to do our next Clear for Takeoff 301 graduation flight out there. So I put a link in there. And we sent out a special discount earlier this week. We dropped the price of the tuition from all the way down to $297. So that's like $500 off the retail price. And Southwest had a sale that ended. What is today? Today's the 16th. Their sale ended on the 11th, but they had another sale out there today. So I went back over. I grabbed another $35 savings on my leg from Sacramento back to Burbank. We're going to fly to Burbank. We're going to go Burbank, Sacramento, and back. And so I think we're going to reinitiate the drop in the tuition to help you capture that for the absolute cheapest price that you possibly can. So the flight coming back from Sacramento to Burbank, I think, is $39 right now. So you won't see that very long, and you won't see it very often. So consider going over there and jumping on that. Okay. So let me share the screen here, and we'll come back into the other parts of the webinar or the show tonight. Okay, so this is just highlighting again there's another link there to go over and get the information, register our monthly 201 live monthly group coaching webinar on this Thursday night, January 18th at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. We'd love to see as many of you as possible. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. This is something that was developed by a therapist named Francine Shapiro back in 1987. She was walking through the park, and she noticed that she had some upsetting thoughts and feelings that suddenly disappeared. And so she was really puzzled by this and decided to find out why. So to make a long story short, she went back and started looking into this. She got into REM sleep and brain studies about sleep, and that's how it got its name. So the eye movement, she noticed that the common factor when she was out in the park was her eyes moving from side to side. And then the desensitization is the process that you use, and reprocessing is what the brain does during REM sleep. And so when she went into the literature to find out what possibly could be going on, it was brain research and sleep research that first unveiled itself. And what they found was the brain at night during REM sleep, those are the deep dreaming states of sleep, causes your eyes to move back and forth when they would track these sleep study patients or subjects. And so they started to put it all together. And now it's one of the leading, if not the leading therapy for people with PTSD and complex PTSD. And I just went to a class a couple months ago now to renew my skills in order to deliver it. And it with the software out there now, I think you can do it remotely, like in a Zoom call. That's the way I'm delivering it. And I think it's more effective with the software than it is actually being in the same room with a therapist. But it's a fascinating bit of therapy. And this is a slide that you'll see if you join us on Thursday. If you start at the left with the steps there, the first one dropped off there. It's where you take a history of the client. And then you come up around from the left up over the top. You go through preparation, assessment where they're at, and then you start step 4, desensitization is the eye movement, or bilateral stimulation. What we know now is it doesn't have to be only eye movement that creates the BLS. It can be audio and tactile with hand paddles as well. And then 5 is where you install a positive cognition, and then 6 you check for body scan to see where people are at in terms of the trauma that they were experiencing before, and you go back and forth in steps 4, 5, and 6 until the person gets to the point where it's the lowest, and hopefully a 0. It works. It's amazing how it works. They're not really sure exactly what it is. If there's any controversy out there, it's because it's hard to come up with some empirical data that show it, because we just can't get into each neuron in the brain and see what's going on up there. But once you go through this process, it's very effective, particularly for people with single incident trauma. But it works on everybody. I read a case study in one of the books that I'm reading about this guy. Had a 2-year-old, if you can believe that, and he played patty cake with him to stimulate the bilateral stimulation. The story is amazing, and this little guy was having some real trauma in his life, and they didn't know where it was or what was causing everything. And in one session, this kid calmed down, and it's a really amazing story to read. I'll probably talk about that on Thursday there. But anyway, once you go through the process 4, 5, and 6 multiple times, you do closure, and then you evaluate. You ask the client to pay attention the next week to see what comes up, if anything. It is, and I think you're going to really enjoy the class that we do on Thursday night. And here's an actual fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging slide that shows of somebody prior to going through EMDR and then afterwards, and just based on deactivation of some of the more volatile areas in the brain, you can see the results. So it's pretty amazing. And if you're not doing it, or if you haven't considered it, particularly if you're somebody who has a really troublesome recurring type problem with entrapment, which I know bothers a lot of you out there. Okay, the FLF Link 101, where the next one's coming up on the 3rd of February. So again, if you happen to be in the Phoenix area, you can join us live at the airport for that class. If you use this same link, it'll take you to the online version too. So I do a live class at the Phoenix airport on Saturday night, February 3rd. And then the next morning on February 4th, I'll do an online version for anybody, whether you attended at Phoenix or not, or anybody that might be anywhere around the world. So I do that every month, except for July and August. We usually skip that because of summer vacations and things like that. So we'd love to have you join us on that as well. And again, the topic for Thursday night, EMDR, a student's guide to trauma therapy. We're going to talk about the practical applications of this, how much more detail about how it came to be and how it works, and hopefully give you some ideas that or different thoughts that you can have about overcoming your fear of flying. I'll pause here for just a minute. Any questions or anything, Diane, that have come up?
There's a comment from a Shally Lucas, and she said, I did 30 sessions of EMDR for fear of flying. And unfortunately, she said, unfortunately, no, it didn't help her. I still canceled my flight and never got on. I've done all the tools. And she said, I think I'm broken. You're not broken.
No. And
Shally.
you know, I never talked about this much. I experienced EMDR for my own trauma back in the early 90s. And it was in its infancy. It was less than 5 years old at the time. And the therapist I was seeing got checked out in it. It was very, very limited. All it was eye movement with watching a finger during the desensitization phases, and it was very effective for me. I'll just share with you the first time. You basically do this for a short period of time, and then the therapist says what came up for you. And the first time he did that, I said, you know what I thought? I said, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. And that's what popped into my mind. The next time he says, okay, hold that thought. And then you go back and you refocus on it or whatever else comes up. And the next one, I was really, really emotionally touched to the point of almost to tears. And so what it does, it's interesting the way it connects to other memories. And what I've learned in the last year is a technique called bridging. Because and I'll save that for Thursday night. But bridging is a way to help more people. So who was that? What was the name of the person that?
That was Shally Lucas.
Oh, Shelley. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know how recent it was, but Shelley, if you want to do a 15-minute coaching call, we can talk about it because literally the game has changed a lot, particularly with the online software that I've been using lately, and this technique called bridging. And I could understand why some people don't get it. And it really is dependent, even though we talk about the gimmick, the eye movement or the bilateral stimulation could be auditory or tactile, that gets a lot of the attention. But the real key is the therapist and the CBT references and prodding and supporting you. That's the key to an effective session. And I don't want to throw names or blame on anybody, but the numbers there's a lot of people out there doing stuff that probably shouldn't be doing it because they need to do their own work first. But that's a whole nother topic there. So anyway, if you want more information and you haven't done a 15-minute coaching call, sign up for that. I got a whole slew of 15-minute coaching calls coming up. And but there's still room there if you want to do that. And anything else?
Nope.
Okay. So I don't know why this just caught me in a weak moment today. I'm a Vietnam vet, and when I was on my way overseas, talk about lonely and all the thoughts going through your mind, like what the hell are you doing going to Vietnam? Because I told my mom when I went to school at the Air Force Academy, she said, "Oh, you're going to end up in Vietnam." And I told her 4 years earlier, that'll be over long before I got there. So 5 years later, here I am going over there. But I remember when you would go over as aircrew, you go through the Philippines, and they would give you the latest on all the prisoner war intelligence that they had and what to do if you're shot down and all that. And I just happened this popped up in my email today in Quora, if any of you know that. And I just remember this story about this kid. We talk about unlucky. This kid was like a 19-year-old sailor I think he was on the stern of the ship, and he got blown over during high winds and everything, and the North Vietnamese patrol boats fished him out of the water, and he became a POW in 1969. And he wasn't, he wasn't what you would think of, all the airmen and stuff that were shot down over there. And so the title of this was "Who in History Had the Last Laugh?" And this is the fellow's name. He's still alive. He's a year older than me, it turns out. And when he got captured, they at first they were going to execute him because they thought he was dumber than dirt, because he would just utter this phrase that "no water buffalo, no water buffalo." And what he was doing, he'd come up with this. He realized that in that culture over there, if you have a water buffalo, you're considered to be elevated in terms of wealth and stuff, and they didn't like wealthy people. So he conveyed to them that he wasn't a bad guy in terms of being wealthy. And so that initially, and then he played dumb for the rest of his time over there. And he was so dumb that they, when they looked to repatriate, they sent 3 POWs back. What was it? You guys remember 1971 or 1970, 1969, something like that. Anyway, they picked 3 people to repatriate because they were trying to improve the world attention, or let the world know that they were, weren't the bad guys that the world was making out. And so he was one of them. And what he had done, he memorized over 200 names of POWs that they had no idea that they were POWs, and he memorized it to the tune of "Old MacDonald Has a Farm," and a lot of detail about the prison facility and all that. So he was quite the hero, and so when I saw this, I thought it'd be a kind of an uplifting way to finish the end of the class here tonight. So anyway. We would like to, unless we got any other questions out there, we would like to thank you all for joining us once again. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Eric, and our good wishes out to Dieter and his family tonight as well. And we hope you come back next week for another edition of Fearless Flight Live, and join us with all your questions. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
You guys soon.